Chapter 5. The Kabbalah of Wizardry. Remember, as above, so below, as within, so without. At this point you might be wondering, how can we, as mere mortals, presume to invoke archangels and evoke ancient gods, goddesses and demon kings? Even though we have the essential operative secrets, hypnosis, the mirror reflection phenomenon and the aura-producing crystal, where do we get the special knowledge, the philosophy and the empowerment to use these methods and magical operations? The philosophy behind Solomon's magic is Kabbalah. In magic, the Kabbalistic mindset is as important as the hypnotic operating technique. If hypnosis is the tactic of the wizard, then Kabbalah is his strategy. About this there is comforting news and challenging news. 56. The challenging news is that you cannot escape learning the basics of Kabbalah. The comforting news is that you don't need to read Hebrew any better than some Tibetan lamas can read Sanskrit, and they are still excellent magicians. Please understand, I don't propose to teach you Kabbalah in this book. This short chapter merely sets forth the special characteristics of our version of Kabbalah. You can familiarize yourself with the grand old system in the works I've recommended in the study guide. With this in mind, let's look briefly at what I call the Kabbalah of Wizardry. It was developed in the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance by nominally Christian magicians and is usually referred to as the Hermetic Kabbalah. How does it differ from Rabbinical Kabbalah, and just how pagan, how Gnostic or how Judeo-Christian is it? These questions may not seem important at this point, but they will loom large as you begin a serious study of the subject, so I will do my best to answer them as briefly and as simply as I can right at the outset of your training. Let us begin by attempting a one-sentence definition of Kabbalah. Kabbalah is a philosophical mathematical geometric system that describes the creation and operation of the universe through 4 dimensions by employing a schematic design containing 10 spheres of descending emanation connected by 22 paths attributed to letters of the alphabet and their numerical equivalents. This is a starting point, but not much better than giving weight, height and color as the definition for an elephant. Essential to understanding Kabbalah is the concept of Ein Sof, the limitless nothing that contracts into itself and produces the Ein Sof, the limitless light, which then expands to produce the universe and continues to enliven and to ensoul it. This conception predates modern physics, Big Bang theory by 1,000 years. It also puts Kabbalistic philosophy in a very controversial position in relation to Orthodox Jewish 57 and Christian religion. At the highest level the Kabbalist can conceive, God is not judgmental or in any way dissatisfied with his creation. He simply is and continues to be. A contemporary popular analogy would be the Force in the Lucas Star Wars films. The universe is therefore operated by lesser, more differentiated personifications such as angels, gods, goddesses and elemental spirits. This idea was originally Neoplatonic, the philosophical high watermark of classical paganism, and can be explored further in the writings of the philosopher Plotinus and his followers. We attribute all these lesser powers to the various spheres and paths of the tree of life structure described in our one-sentence definition. We can then access them for knowledge or for help. Thinking of it in a more subjective way, we might say that Kabbalah is a spiritual magical computer program for your mind. It interfaces the left and right hemispheres of the brain, a modem physiological reality originally theorized by the Kabbalist Isaac Luria in the 16th century, and allows you to go online with the great mainframe. In other words, the microcosm, you, accesses the macrocosm, God. Since its emergence in medieval southern France and Spain to the present era, Kabbalah, especially magical Kabbalah, has been studied and practiced by as many Gentiles as Jews. In 15th century Europe a philosophical marriage took place that established the lineage of the Western esoteric tradition. Hebrew Kabbalah was united with classical paganism, Hermeticism. Hermetic philosophy had arisen in the 2nd century of the Christian era as an attempt to preserve the ancient wisdom from the anti-intellectual onslaught of Christian zealots. It combined elements of Neoplatonic, Gnostic and Orphic teachings. When the Hermetic writings were rediscovered by Renaissance Europeans, magic was literally reborn. Hebrew Kabbalah, which shared many of the same original roots, was soon integrated into the Hermetic scheme to give it a necessary structure. 58 humanist Hermetic philosophers enriched their magical art by including the pagan Orphic hymns to the gods and drawing on the exotic Arabian Sabian one. Planetary magical system, having origins in ancient Canaan and Babylon, to create an elegant synthesis. The earth was declared a goddess, the anima mundi. The deified sun, moon and planets were evoked both in the human body and in the heavens beyond. This obviously pagan, capricious and amoral pantheon was balanced and regulated by angelic counterparts retained from the biblical system. However, in the Hermetic Kabbalah these angels were thought of as the sentient messengers or special power givers, not of a biblical Jehovah but of an omnipresent, omnipotent and non-judgmental force that flowed throughout the universe. The famous Renaissance philosopher-magician, Giordano Bruno, who was supposedly burned at the stake for supporting Copernicus's heliocentric theory, was actually executed by the Inquisition not because he publicly declared that yes, the earth does revolve around the sun, but because he then insisted that the sun is a god. Kabbalah, in its earliest form, was probably derived from a synthesis of Pythagorean mathematical, geometric philosophy and Simonian, Samaritan, Gnosticism in 1st century Palestine and Alexandria. Its Palestinian roots are shrouded in myth, but we can make an argument for a pagan Samaritan origin. 2. In its later Hermetic form, the practical, magical, Kabbalah is similar to Tibetan Tantric Buddhism in that elaborate visualizations of frankly pagan god forms, angels and elemental spirits are encouraged. Judaic and Muslim religious tradition forbids this imagery, thus severely handicapping their forms of Kabbalah. 3. There is, however, one major difference between our Hermetic system and that of the Tantrics. They contend that everything is ultimately illusion, whereas we say that everything is ultimately reality. For this reason we place great emphasis on developing and balancing the four philosophical elements, fire, air, water and earth, animated by the force which we call spirity, 59 in Hermetic Kabbalistic terms. These four elements are the manifestation of the Tetragrammaton, the fourfold name of God. They are further personified by the four archangels of the quarters with which you are already familiar. The importance of these four magical elements, which are also the Grail Hallows and the Tarot Suits, cannot be overemphasized. I need not press my argument further than to refer the student to one of our major beginning texts, Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Bardon. This entire work is devoted to the mastery of these four principles. Hermetic Kabbalah also employs angelic balancing forces as invoking and evoking formulas to call down and summon up its otherwise pagan entities. There should be no disrespect or irrelevance toward ancient deities in this process. It is the traditional source of the magician's power. The arts of theurgy and thaumaturgy 4. Allow you to explore vast dream realms and discover lost treasures of spirit. One might say that the worshipping mystic waits on the whim of his god while the magician sets out to climb Mount Olympus. If you are a spiritual adventurer, the respectful manipulation of these forces will be the appropriate method for you. You now have a beginning idea of what Hermetic Kabbalah is about, but you may still wonder how it differs from traditional Jewish Kabbalah. It differs in three ways. First, Jewish Kabbalah is primarily concerned with decoding the first 5 books of the Bible via the process of gematria. Each Hebrew letter has a number value, hence any other word adding up to the same value has a mystic relation or could be a coded substitution. Second, Jewish Kabbalah, of the most esoteric Lurianic school, does postulate a non-judgmental God force at the highest level but becomes highly moralistic in descending levels. And, third, Jewish Kabbalah has nothing to do with the tarot or any pagan god forms on the tree of life. By the 18th century the Jewish intellectual establishment had generally abandoned Kabbalah as a baleful influence on their 60s culture, although, in recent years there has been a revival of interest in the subject in the Jewish community, especially in the 1960s and 70s when the rabbis discovered that some of their brightest young people were attracted to esoteric Buddhism. This historical background is mentioned so that the reader will be aware that there are distinctly different conceptions and philosophies of Kabbalah. There is no official Kabbalah, there is only the Kabbalah that is right for you. We should also mention that our particular OTA version of the Hermetic Kabbalah uses Phoenician letters instead of Hebrew, see Figure 5, and Phoenician alphabet appendix, and that we use a non-Judaic tetragrammaton in lieu of YHVH. 5. Where does Jesus fit into all of this? Was there ever any such thing as a Christian Kabbalah? There were some attempts at this during Renaissance, but Christianity's doctrine of faith is fundamentally opposed to the Kabbalah's doctrine of knowledge, gnosis, and Christianity's triune structure will not fit into the 10 spheres of the Otchiim, tree of life. If you are eclectic, you can place Jesus and Tifereth, along with Baal and Osiris, but you should be aware that this is not an elegant assignment because there are no other deities in any Christian pantheon whom you can then place in the other Sephiroth. The apostles won't fit and the saints aren't appropriate. Conversely, ancient Semitic pagan deities fit so perfectly on the tree that one might think that the Kabbalah was secretly designed for their eventual return. Modern archaeological research by Professor Simo Parpala, presented in his article The Assyrian Tree of Life from the Journal of Near Eastern Studies, 1994, supports this view, establishing that the original 10-sphere tree was attributed to the gods and goddesses of ancient Mesopotamia, which were nearly cognate with our Canaanite pantheon, and which were imported into ancient Israel after the Assyrian conquest with the forced resettlement of the Samaritans. See Note 2. And see Figure 5 on the following page, 61t. E Phoenician 1a 66 Apophy of the Ordo Templi. 9 starts / I, ACIT. Less than / Figure 5. The Otchiim, tree of life, with the Phoenician alphabet and god forms attributed to paths and spheres. 62 I feel that a person's relationship with Jesus should be a personal and private matter. We do not invoke Christ in our rituals because he does not fit into the Hermetic system. He would not be comfortable having to share importance with our ancient gods and goddesses or even the angels that empower the 4 elements. If you consider Jesus to have been the chosen representative of God among men, you should let him stand alone. At this juncture we need to explain how the Kabbalah relates to our Goetia and all middle systems. The best way to understand these relationships is to study the Tree of Life diagram, Figure 5, and try to visualize the conceptions. The Tree of Life, Otchiim, is a philosophical schematic of the universe as it was created and as it continues to function. The tree has 10 spheres because we have 10 fingers and our mathematics is based on the number 10. We separate the tree into 4 descending alams or dimensions. In an oversimplified way, these dimensions can be thought of as levels of vibration or frequency, like UHF, VHF, etc. At the top we have Atzilith, the world of origins, which creates and contains the single Sephra of Kether. At this exalted level God is neither male or female and certainly not judgmental. This is the force which empowers the mighty 2-stroke engine of the next dimension, Alhambria, the world of archetypes and archangels, where the yin-yang, the Sephiroth of Chakma and Bina, male/positive male/negative, revolves with impersonal, cyclical detachment, generating the myriad preforms of the Alam Yetzirah, the Alam of formation, the so-called astral plane. This derives from Plato, who originated the idea of the original idea, the concept that there has to be an ideal archetype preceding every physical manifestation. The Neoplatonists then made these ideal forms dynamic through the theory of emanations. These pre-forms become physically manifested in the Mal-Alam, Asiya, which contains the single Sephra of Malkuth. 63 The Yetziratic dimension, wherein the magician does most of his or her work, comprises the Sephirot from chest down to Yesod. Here we find the anthropomorphic and zoomorphic images of mythology. This is the realm of the gods that Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, and here we will find the genii of King Solomon's brass vessel. Well, not exactly. The truth is that all of King Solomon's spirits are found in the lowest Sephra of the astral, the lunar sphere of Yesod. This is the case even though they are attributed to all the planets from Mercury, Hod, on up to Saturn, Bina. We have what appears to be a paradox as a result of trying to explain Kabbalah in one short chapter. The Tree of Life design serves different functions. In the description above, and on Figure 5, we use the 4 alayam division on one single tree to show the process of creation. Be aware, however, that each of the 4 dimensions operate throughout the whole tree and each sephir contains its own complete tree. We find all of Solomon's genii and the various planetary spheres of Yesod because Yesod is gateway to the astral, the sphere of memory and the sphere of the dark mirror. If this sounds confusing, try to visualize it this way. The moon is the planetary sphere closest to the earth. In Kabbalistic terms, Yesod is the sapphire closest to Malkuth. The outer planets and the sun are reflected down through it. Coming up from below, it is our port of entry into the subconscious emotional astral plane, Alayam Yetzirah. Thus the lunar mirror and memory aspects of Yesod are very appropriate because the Goetia spirits are, in a psychological sense, all reflections off different aspects of our self extended out in a flat circle on this primal, emotional level. Observe the moon and all thy workings, the Lemegton declares. Given the above, your next question should be which archangels control these Goetia spirits? Obviously Gabriel rules Yesod and should be invoked in a greater, lunar planetary, 64 septagram ritual preceding every Goetic operation. Remember, the 72 spirits of the brass vessel are not an ascending hierarchy and neither are the 4 archangels of the quarters and the 72 angels of the Shemimifurish 6. Who control the 72 Goetic spirits. They are all in a flat circular pattern following the signs of the zodiac, see the master mandala. You may note another apparent paradox with the 4 archangels of the quarters and the elements also doubling as 4 of the 7 planetary archangels. Kabbalist hair splitters will tell you they are actually different beings with the same names. You may find it necessary, at a certain stage of your development, to go along with this. Eventually you will internalize the archangels as principles, e.g., Raphael personifies the illuminating sun in the eastern quadrant and the life-giving properties of the air. Recall my Metatron H.G.A. and Alpha Angelic Totem Pole. These angels are not attributed to the planets in any context. Once you have raised such ancient deities as Baal, Astarte, Amon-Ra or Horus through their Goetia forms via the lunar gate, you may certainly seek them in their higher spheres under their original titles and proper planetary operations. The Picatrix provides an excellent resource for such advanced workings. Remember, the ancient gods and goddesses are capricious, like the forces of nature they represent. Balance your work carefully. Considering the above, the thoughtful student might ask if Hermetic Kabbalistic magic is an amoral system? It is not possible to give a quick and simple no answer to this question. One reason is that there is nothing quick and simple about Kabbalah. Another reason is that without certain philosophical principles such as reincarnation, the law of karma and the belief that spiritual evolvement requires one to transcend personal ego and find compassion for all humankind, Hermetic Kabbalah could be seriously misused. 65 For this reason we follow the example of Hermes Trismegistus and keep the teachings as a prize to be won by seekers after wisdom, not a gospel to be preached to multitudes. So, if you find this chapter a little difficult to understand, without parallel reading, you should realize that we are following that principle, and you will be encouraged to study the recommended texts. If this brief theoretical explanation raises as many questions as it answers, we are at least off to a good start. Now let's take a quick look at the practical Kabbalistic aspects of a Goetic operation, after opening the lunar gate, Yesod, with a planetary septagram ritual, during which you will internally expand the Tree of Life in Yesod, located in the genital chakra, to displace and overlay the other psychic centers in your body. See Chapter 9, Figure 7. You will then circumambulate your magic circle deosal as many turns as the number of the sapphire you are working, e.g., 7 times for the sphere of Netzach. Likewise, in a Yesod Netzach operation you would use green candles and bum sandalwood incense. The names of power that you plug into your standard conjuration are drawn from the master mandala and the 777 references to the sphere of your working. You will also use the proper planetary metal, or an affordable facsimile, for the spirit's lemon worn by the receiver. As you can see, there is psychotechnical structure to Solomon's magic that is definitely Kabbalistic. This does not mean that you have to master all the theoretical principles and practical methods of this venerable philosophy before you venture into wizardry. The fact is you will never master it all. One of the more important things you will learn from the study of Kabbalah and the practice of magic is the vast extent of what you really do not know. The more you study and practice, the greater, deeper and further this unknowing extends. Remember this when someone tries to tell you how much they know or how much you do not know about Kabbalah.